everyone, welcome. I feel very suited for introducing a panel titled Queer 80s, Teens Past and Future. I'm not sure where I am on that spectrum, but I'm definitely a queer 80s teen, so it's really exciting for me to be here to introduce and actually really just welcome back, because I think probably everyone here will know our two authors today, because they are not strangers to the festival. So it's really great to have Mike and Tim back. And I wanted to, first of all, just thank Nan for the amazing leadership and as director of the festival. It's the second to last event, so it's the victory lap almost, so congratulations. I also wanted to give a big thank you to East End Books over in the front room there. They have all of the authors' books for sale, and right after Tim and Mike are done, you can go over and buy their books and get them signed. So I hope you will do that and pick up any of the authors' books from the festival you've missed. So it's a great opportunity to make a big final purchase. So really excited to introduce Mike and Tim. Mike Albo is a writer and performer living in Brooklyn, New York. His most recent novel, Another Dimension of Us, was published by Penguin Random House in 2023. That's my employer. His other works include the novels Hornito, 2000 from HarperCollins, and The Underminer, The Best Friend Who Casually Destroys Your Life, written with Virginia Heffernan, which is a Bloomsbury publication, as well as the novella The Junket and memoir Spermhood, Diary of a Donor. Both are Amazon Kindle singles. Albo has written for the New York Times, The New Yorker, New York Magazine, Lambda's Legal Insight Magazine, TED, Out, AARP, and many other outlets, and he has dazzled Provincetown earlier this weekend at the Poetry Salon with an amazing performance. Tim Murphy, first of all, made it out of the flooded New York City to get here, so we're so happy he did it. Tim, I'm also the proud editor of Tim's book that he'll be presenting today, so I'm very excited to welcome you. Tim is the author of the novels Christodora, which was longlisted for the Andrew Carnegie Prize, and Correspondence, both published by Grove. He has been a New York City-based journalist, mainly on HIV, AIDS, and LGBTQ issues for more than 30 years, including for the New York Times, New York Magazine, Pause Magazine, and TheBody.com. He has also taught journalism at City College of New York and advanced fiction at NYU. He grew up in the Boston area and lives now in Queens. He is the author of the Substack The Caftan Chronicles, which runs long interviews with gay men over the age of 60 who've led notable lives. He is happy to be back at the Provincetown Book Festival, whose inaugural year, 2016, he took part in. So over to Tim and Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And Nan, I hope you're not sick of people praising you and thanking you, but thank you. And thanks to the advisory board and to the Academy and everyone else who's involved in this amazing festival. It's been such a mind-opening couple days for me. Hi. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of backstory, and then I'm going to read a section from the middle of the book. But I have to explain a few things before I do that, because it's kind of bizarre if I just throw you in there. So first of all, in around 1998, there's this bookstore in Los Angeles called the Bodhi Tree Bookstore, used bookstore. It was so great. Sadly, it's not there anymore. But it was a used bookstore for new age books, and every time I was in LA, I would go and get a book. And in 1998, like I said, I picked up this one, The Art and Practice of Astral Projection by Ophir. And the former owner of this book was really into it, and there's like notes and underlines and scribbles all over it. And either this person learned how to astrally project and it just fell on the floor and then ended up, or he was like, oh, this is dumb. But anyway, so I've had this book for a long time, and to bring everything back to Provincetown, because that's at the center of my creative soul, I feel like, I was at the Dune Shacks about 10 years ago, and there's another book there that was sort of a similar New Age title, and I started thinking about what if some sort of idea of someone who gets the book and learns how to use the book, and everything gets fucked up. And so that was in the back of my mind for all these years. But before that, in the 80s, I was growing up in the 80s in Virginia, and I started coming into my sexuality right when AIDS was finally making its way into the national news, finally. I knew I was gay, but of course I wasn't going to tell a soul. I kept a diary, and I was in love with a lot of boys. But one boy in particular was this poet, and he was beautiful. And I think he introduced me to so many poets, and he sort of sparked my love of poetry. And we were on the literary magazine together, and I'm not joking. He was really hot. And like if there's a film ever made, it would be played by Timothée Chalamet or something. He had like curly, long, dark hair. We hung out a lot, and we would listen to Pink Floyd with the lights off, and like try to find secret codes. And he was such an inspiring person. And I remember one time we went out to the train tracks, and he put his head on my lap, and I petted his head, and that's as far as it went. And I think about that moment ever since. What could have happened, who I would have been if time had changed was different in any way. Another dimension of us is about a group of queer 15-year-olds who live in the past and future. Some of them live in 1986 in Virginia, and some of them live in 2044 in Virginia. And both of these sets of friends find this mysterious book about astral projection. In 2044, we meet a girl named Pris. She's athletic, she's black, she's an out lesbian at school, but she's not very well liked because of the way she looks. She has this sort of striped skin, sort of a form of vitiligo that it makes her striped, and everyone makes fun of her because, people are horrible. She finds support in her history teacher, whose name is Mr. Richards, and her best friend, whose name is Jade, who is a trans... Hi.
It's my niece.
God. Never follow a baby on stage. No, it's true. Her name's Jade. She's a trans non-binary individual and who's coming into their beauty, and Chris feels like they're growing distant. In 1986, we meet Tommy, and Tommy is gay, but definitely not out, and he's a 15-year-old who's also bullied at school. His last name happens to be Gay, G-A-Y-E. That doesn't really help, but he's also gay. He has a hopeless crush on his new friend, beautiful and budding poet Ronaldo, who also goes by Renee. And Renee takes Tommy to the library and introduces him to all sorts of poets. And they share this strange night together in which Renee's being really kind of erratic and strange. And then Renee comes to school a very different person. And that's because he is, and I won't go into it, but Tommy finds out that he's been abducted and that his soul is in the astral plane. So, and then in the future, Jade starts acting weird, and Pris finds out that Jade has been abducted and goes to the astral plane. So both Tommy and Pris separately travel to the astral plane to save their friends. They meet, and they're in the lower plane, which is a very crappy, weird place to be. And they have a spirit guide whose name you guys are like, is he stoned? There's a spirit guide whose name is Lolly, who is a cereal mascot, sort of like the Lucky Charms leprechaun, but he has lollipops for hair, and he's their spirit guide through the lower plane. There's a reason for that, but I won't go into it. So in this scene, they're rolling along in Lolly's wagon and through the astral plane, and Pris, since she's met Tommy, has been kind of distant and not very nice. The wagon continued rolling. Gradually, the sky grew cloudier, as if a mist were descending into the valley. It felt wet. Soon the three were in a fog. It seemed to absorb sound. Even the incessant wagon song was muffled. "Ah, we're getting closer to the passage," yelled Lolly from the driver's seat. Passage to the higher plane? Yuppers? How can you tell? Said Pris. Feel the air. It's tingly. Lolly stretched out his clown hands and his hair jangled. He coughed afterward like he was coming down with a cold. He was right. The air was agitated, full of energy, like being near an ocean on the edge of something powerful. The sky grew dark. Lolly clicked his tongue and stuck his thumb in his mouth, making a popping noise, and the lollipops in his hair lit up like lamps, beaming around them. It just gets less visible the closer you are to it. To ward off simpler beings, there's a few hurdles to getting to the gateway for the higher plane. Pris tossed her disc back and forth between her hands. She's a frisbee that she's very adept with. Hey, Tommy said tentatively, are you okay? Pris looked at him and watched him flinch, as if he was waiting for her to snap again. Her face softened. He was a nice person, and she felt bad for making him nervous around her. Perhaps the fog in the air made it easier to talk because it felt insular and concealed like a confessional booth. I'm so worried about Jade, Pris finally said. I don't know what I'll do if I lose them. Tommy bit his lip. Do you like her? Them, I mean, sorry. Oh, you mean am I, attracted to them? No. I love Jade, but not that way. Just because we're both queer doesn't mean... Wait, you call yourself queer? Yeah, why? Tommy laughed, the absurdity dawning on him. Wow, so in the future, it becomes okay to say you're queer. Yep, that's what you call yourself. That's the term you use in your time, Tommy laughed again. What's so funny? It's just that, in my time, that is the worst thing you can call somebody, besides, this other word. Oh yeah, that one. That word's still a big one. But queer, that's okay. Uh-huh, it's a compliment. I guess you could say, in a way, it is now. Well, where I'm from, queer used to mean somebody who's, weak. Like the game Smear the Queer on the playground. My brother used to play it with the other kids. What's the game? You know, I'm not sure. Someone is picked and then everyone has to tackle them while they run around trying to escape being tackled? That's awful. But I guess in a way it's hopeful, because look how much life can change. Tommy looked down at his legs. Pris noticed his eyes were tearing up. I miss Renee. He's like Jade to me. But more than that, you like him. Pris watched Tommy's face clench. I mean, as a friend, but also maybe you like him, like you're queer. No, I'm not, he shot back defensively, as if he wasn't even thinking, just reacting. Pris saw his face in the dim, colorful light, the anger and hurt in his eyes. She tried to remember what Mr. Richards told her about that time, that people felt shame for who they loved. She couldn't understand it, not entirely. She felt a stab of guilt. She turned to Tommy and put her hand on his shoulder. It's cool, you don't have to be ashamed. Not with me, not now. Tommy was shivering. It's just so hard. Go ahead and say it, I bet you'll feel better. Say what? You know. She watched as Tommy held his breath and bit his lip. He glanced around the lower plane, as if he was checking for police or someone who would immediately kill him. It's okay, Tommy, it's not gonna hurt you. I'm queer? Tommy exhaled. I'm queer. His lower lip curled into a cry, as if his face had stored the words in his mouth for so long they were cramping. Overhead, they heard creaking, like wooden boats were bobbing above their heads. In the mist, they couldn't see anything, but it sounded like trees were surrounding them, giant oaks croaking and bending in a powerful wind. Are we in a forest? I can't tell. Honestly, I've never taken this path to the higher plane, Lolly said, puzzled. Over the creeks was another sound, sipping and inhaling, as if they were in a giant bathtub and the drain was sucking in water. Dark figures started coming into view around them. The mist gave way. They saw that they were indeed surrounded by trees, but that there were no leaves on the ground, no branches overhead, just these massive croaking trunks. Wow, this place is so isolated. Hello, Pris yelled. The echo took longer time to come back. Hello, called Tommy. Guess what? I'm queer, he giggled when he said it. Wait, said Lolly. I'm queer, said Tommy, delighting himself. Shh, Lolly scolded, grabbing Tommy by the shoulders. Lolly looked deeply into his eyes. These aren't trees, they're ghosts. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Mike, you read from my favorite. Is that when they're on like the weird vehicle and they're flying through the sky of like the lower?
They're in his wagon.
Yeah. That's the most vivid. To me, that was the most like psychedelic, just weird. Like that's the chunk of your book that I remember the most vividly. Yeah. So thanks to all for coming, friends. And some family as well. My husband, Marlon, my little niece, who's already bailed on the event. She's like, she can only take these things in small doses. And to Nan, of course. I mean, you really just started something so extraordinary here at Nan 7 years ago. And and it was wonderful helping you put those first few years together. And I'm just so happy to see the event thriving ever since, because you've really given such a gift to P-Town. So, one more round of applause. So I'll just read a bit. I'll set this up. My niece gave me the sticker right before I went on as a good luck thing and told me that I'm the pilgrim. So I like that because, we're in this very pilgrimic setting. So this is my new novel. It's called Speech Team, and the quick setup is that I was on Speech Team in high school in Massachusetts in the 80s, and people often say, oh, what's that? Is that debate team? And debate was but one of many fabulous categories in Speech Team. You could compete in, you could write your own speech and deliver it. You could deliver someone else's famous speech. You could perform children's literature. You could do a duo with another person. Hey, Ellie. Hi. Many categories, including debate. And I loved it because it was just a window into a bigger world. That in the big picture is not that big, but when one town and one school, this was the chance to commingle with students from all sorts of schools, public, private, parochial, etc., and kind of showed you the full breadth of the Massachusetts school kids or whatever, and it's a really happy memory, along with I was just like the poor stepchild of being the theater club or whatever, because you never did it for your other schoolmates. You went off and you did it elsewhere, like at other schools, like on a Saturday. So the book is about these 4 friends from high school in the 80s who were all on speech teams together. They're all like super nerdy or queer or both. And 25 years later, they find out that a 5th member has killed himself. And in the note he leaves on Facebook, it's very much a Facebook era book. I think we wouldn't come back together with a lot of people from our youth if it weren't for Facebook, or I guess now Instagram. So it plays on that era of the past 10 years. And in the note that he leaves on Facebook, he calls out the teacher who was their speech coach and says, and says something really awful that the coach said to him that he never ever forgot. It kind of shadowed his whole life. So these 4 friends slowly and kind of awkwardly come back together in fits and starts, and they share notes, and they realize that he said something really awful to all of them, and in like a very private, like pulled them aside kind of way. So. And they all admit that none of them have ever forgotten it, right? So they find some relief in they find, you are really upstaging me, my little niece. We are gonna talk after this, because no one upstaged me. So they decide to go find him. They find out that this teacher is in retirement in Florida, and they decide to together go find him and confront him, and basically to say, do you remember what you said to us? Because we do. We never forgot it, and why did you say it? So that's sort of the setup. So this is kind of the, wow, nap time. So this is kind of the prologue to the book. It's really short. This set in February 2013 in Sarasota, Florida. On the Ringling Bridge from Longboat Key to the mainland, on the way to find Gold's house, Anthony driving the ridiculously massive Escalade he'd rented at the airport, Jennifer sitting up straight beside him in the passenger seat, Nat slouched beside me in the back, mute, I contemplated the numbing idiocy of Florida. It was a better train of thought than obsessing over what we were about to do. Additionally, it was impossible not to, watching the eternal unfurling of periwinkle sky, cyan water, green palm trees, white boxy homes. How could someone not be rendered utterly imbecilic in this land of relentless sun that bleached away critical thought, frictionless weather that made cynicism a moot point? Was this what you yearned for once you hit your 60s or 70s, to trade the cold and damp of New England, that inclemency that made you cranky and mean but also kept you skeptical and alert, for this mindless, blank paradise? Apparently, this was what Gold had wanted. No more damp and musty herringbone overcoats, no more ugly rain boots, no more exhaling that final plume from his Vantage cigarette into the frigid gunmetal air of a Reagan-era Saturday morning in January before flicking it into the slush and boarding the bus, his breath sour with carcinogens and his tongue front-loaded with corny competition day aphorisms, soon to be bestowed on us as the bus groaned its way toward the highway. This is the most mind-numbingly monotonous landscape, I said. Anthony snorted a short, nervous laugh. I'll take it over New York right now. Amen to that, followed Jennifer. I glanced at Nat beside me, rolled my eyes. I picked up on this dynamic the night before, this subtle alignment of Anthony and Jennifer against, or at very least, in counterpoint to Nat and me. It had class overtones, Anthony's dazzling success and Jennifer's quieter but still unambiguous good fortune lording itself subtly over my existence as a nonprofit communications drone in a second-tier city. Over Nat sneered. And I love Providence, by the way. Let me just make that clear, okay? Some people have accused me of being a Providence hater, and I went to school there and I love it. So that's why it's in the book. It's not a diss. Over Nat, just want to clarify that. Over Nat's near poverty as a small plot farmer. Projection on my part or no, the cleft bonded me more closely to Nat. I wanted her to roll her eyes back at me, at least yield a faint conspiratorial smirk. But instead she just glanced at me, her eyes full of terror? Was that what I was seeing? I took her hand. It was shaking. Are you okay? I asked her quietly. Not so quietly, though, that Jennifer, hearing, didn't twist around in her seat with a look of concern, brow furrowed. Nat looked straight ahead. I'm fine. Only then she glanced at me. I mean, I admit it, I'm nervous, but I'm fine. Jennifer put a hand on Nat's knee. I'm nervous too, she said. It's understandable, isn't it? I mean, we're doing something kind of weird. Nat, finally laughing briefly, nodded emphatically as though she were relieved and grateful that Jennifer had spelled it out. It's really weird. And it's justified. It was Anthony glancing at Nat in the rearview mirror. But honey, if you want to back out, there's still time. You could just wait for us at a Starbucks or something. Nat didn't answer right away, as though she were seriously considering the offer. But then she said, No, I don't want to back out. As soon as she said it, the tremble in her hand, still lodged in mine, intensified. I squeezed it. And then Anthony was turning the Escalade off a shopping strip into a network of residential trees, an infinite middle-browed landscape of fairly modest white or sand-colored single-level ranch homes, landscaping tidy, if not lush. Jennifer pointed at the GPS mounted to the dashboard. Look, she said, he is now about 900 feet away. Anthony slowed to a crawl. This should be it up here on the left, he said. 6759, 57, 55, and here we go. We were crawling up on the opposite side of the street upon a butter yellow ranch house, fairly indistinguishable from the rest, a well-tended lawn. First I saw the mailbox. Gold, I exclaimed, reading the name stenciled there. And then we saw him. Gold, 1987, with the addition of 25 years, sitting on the front steps with a mug of coffee at his side, that same tight crown of curls now entirely snowy white, peeking out from under a Red Sox cap. The body still slim but smaller looking, slightly hunched in a polo shirt, golf shorts, and flip-flops. Oh my God, it's him, Anthony said, hushed. But Gold had barely had a moment to look up from his newspaper at us before Nat cried out, Keep driving! We all twisted around toward her. What? Anthony asked. She exploded in tears, her hands to her face. Keep driving, please. Anthony, drive on, said Jennifer sternly. But just drive on, Anthony. Okay. which he did down the street, then a left, then a right, all of us silent while Nat cried, and I rubbed her back until we were back on the main commercial road and he pulled into the parking lot of a Denny's. Sweetie, I cooed to Nat, shh, it's okay, it's okay. It's totally okay, Jennifer said, her hand on Nat's knee again. But for me, it really wasn't okay. Regardless of what had just snapped in Nat, I was quelling my own private panic. Was this how it was going to end? After all the coming back together, the sharing of notes, reliving that shame, the deliberations about whether this was the right thing to do and how exactly to go about it, now we were reversing course? I would not. If the others decided to bail, if I had to get out of the Escalade alone and walk back to Gold's, I'd do so. I'd come to believe that I could shake something loose in myself if I confronted him, that some kind of peace or freedom lay on the other side of the reckoning. I had to go through with it. The GPS still running told us he was only a quarter mile away. It was in fact outlined in emphatic blue. It was in fact outlining in emphatic blue the route back to his house. It was time to be brave, I thought, a rare chance to avenge the mortifications of youth. Avenge? No, I thought. This wasn't vengeance. Far too base a word for such a long and considered journey. This was reckoning, truth and reconciliation, as Jennifer put it, restorative justice, noble ends unmarred by something as petty, primal, and hurting as vengeance. Okay, it may have been all those things, but there was a touch of vengeance in it too, at least for me. I'd felt that the moment I'd seen Gold sitting on that stoop, older and smaller. He was vulnerable, like we'd been.
That's my copy, thank you very much.
Oh yeah, thanks for that. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
We're friends.
I know. I'm so excited. It's so great to be on stage with you with a friend, but also someone whose work I love so much.
Ditto.
Yeah. We didn't plan to start here, but that section really brings up for me what I was saying to you earlier about how a lot of your work deals with class, but also when I was reading it, I thought about how systemic, I guess is the right word, for a social life is, and like how there's always this time, maybe in my 20s, there were all these people I was hanging out with, and some of them were wealthy and some of them weren't, and some then they were suddenly like, bye, I'm gonna go be like a fashion editor, bye. There's like this weird diversion that happens with people, and your characters have such different lives, and they were so cohesive back then, and Jennifer becomes an academic, and Anthony becomes this fashion victim, and Nat is a farmer, right?
Yeah, she's a small, and I actually have I've met people who they're like rental farmers, like they don't own the land, but like they rent a bit of land, and I was doing this story upstate in the Hudson Valley, and I met like these young people who were like so it does exist. It's not just a poverty profession that I made up for the books.
And so I guess my question would be, like, what chicken and egg kind of thing? Like, what came first? When you were thinking about this book, were you like, I want to write a book about blank? Did you know the characters that you were going to have? Like, how did that form?
I think, for one thing, I'm very upfront about this. The two books I wrote before this are like twice the size. And like one is set against the backdrop of like the AIDS epidemic in New York City, and the other is set against the backdrop of like the U.S. invading Iraq in 2003. And partly the motivation for this book was I just wanted to write a shorter, breezier book with not such not a kind of premise where maybe 9 out of 10 people would be like, ew, I don't want to read that, sounds like a bummer, So, just a novel about high school, like almost everyone went to high school, and many people have high schools in their past, and I think in this Facebook era, we have this experience of getting back in touch with people, or of literally seeing people's lives after having almost forgotten about them after 20, 25 years, and being like, oh, they turned out exactly the way I thought, you know. Or the reverse, you know, just being like, wow, I never knew that that person would have moved to Paris and I don't know, whatever, you know. So I just want to write a book with a bigger, wider portal for people to enter. But I think the other thing was, you know, so the question was like, how do I do that and still write a book that has meaning to me, you know, and that's authentic? And I think before I started writing it, I met up with like 2 friends from high school who I literally had not seen since graduation day. And they weren't like my closest friends, but they were in kind of, I'd say, the broad circle of like weirdo, misfit, arty queers, you know. And we just started talking about like the bullying, you know, and just like the abuse that, we were in high school from like 83 to 87. So, you know, just to give you a sense of how eras change and of mores of what's acceptable, it changed. There were no bullying programs. There were no anti-bullying programs. There were no everyone's special, diversity, inclusivity. That was, that world, that language did not exist. It just didn't. I mean, maybe you were lucky if you like, be nice to everyone every day. Like that might have been what passed for like woke training for kids, you know, and not even that, you know? So I left this, it was great to see them, but I left feeling like weirdly, and this was only a few years ago, so I was like 50, you know? I left feeling like weirdly bruised and like really upset at the fact that the memories were like so painful. Like I really just thought that I had moved on or whatever, you know? So that was sort of and you know, and the other piece too is that like what the speech coach says to Tip, a deeply veiled avatar for myself, is exactly what, you know, what a teacher pulled me aside privately to say to me in high school, which was like, stop being such a flaming homosexual. And I was, you know, as my brother were here, he would attest that like I was not a shy or quiet kid. I was very mouthy and was never at a loss for words. But this was one of the few times where I was just stunned. It was like he was holding up an ugly mirror to me, and I was like so far away from even being ready to like admit to myself that I was gay. But he was just like, you're a homosexual, you're acting like one, and you have to stop. And I just remember like walking out of like stunned, you know, just like flabbergasted. And I told almost no one, you know, it didn't occur to me to go to the administration or my parents. I was just so ashamed, you know? I told one friend, I remember she was like out at tennis practice, and I went up to like, and I told her, and she was like, she goes, he's an asshole, don't listen to him. But, you know, which was a nice response, but like such you know, compared to today, like where that remark would land a teacher today, like just so kind of, whatever, just, you know, get over it. And that was that. So those were like the pieces for the book. So I'll flip the question and ask you, what were the origin pieces for this book? Which also, before you answer, I should say, is your writing it's so bonkers, it's so amazing, and because you have a novel that hasn't come out yet, but it's an adult, in some ways, an adult version of this book, because it's extremely multiverse. Like, I don't even know how you, like, not being a sci-fi fantasy kind of person, like, I don't even know how you dream this stuff up, but it's like, in your books, I feel like I'm in a VR 3D, you know, like, ride, right. You know, like, they're just mind-blowing, you know, in their weird, imaginative journeys that they take you on.
Yeah.
Okay, now you can talk.
Okay, thank you. You're so great. Well, I'll answer that first. So the other night at this wonderful gathering of poetry reading that happens, it's like one of the most amazing things. But I did a bit that I've done since 1997 called Service, and it's this like litany of commercial phrases and commercial language, and I've always been obsessed with consumerism, and I was such a TV watcher when I was a kid. In fact, at one point, I thought, you know who John Eric Hexum is? Like the hottest man who ever existed. Does anyone know him? He was so hot. Anyway, so I literally thought that he was in love with me through the television. Like, I was like, he's looking at me. I can tell. So I have a weird relationship with commercial television, and I just feel like it's a porous portal kind of thing. So I've always had this obsession with advertising and commercial language. And so the lower plane in this book and in the science fiction book that has yet to be published, please someone help me, is just very gacky, disgusting, like the most perverse versions of our consumer selves, you know. So I don't think we address that enough. I don't think we address all the commercials and all the fucking shit that gets in our bodies enough. And I guess that's sort of what I'd like to talk about, you know. But besides, you know, telling everyone about how it was inspired by that amazing book that it's somewhere here, when I got the okay to write this book from Penguin Workshop, it was November 2019. I started working on it. Then the pandemic happened, and I was stuck in my apartment and by myself. And I have a ton of poetry books lying around my apartment. And my window looks out over an EMT, and which had now been filled with lots and lots of ambulances that were blinking, you know, red all the time. And I watched all these people, all these workers, washing down their gurneys and putting them back in, and that was just like my what I was witnessing. And I live in Gowanus, and which I like to rebrand as Gowanus, so please start saying that. It's in Brooklyn. And it was sort of an area where a lot of teenagers would hang out. And and as we were all trying to socialize in some desperate way at the time, I saw these kids hanging out together. And I started thinking about, when was the last time I was in a plague? And it was when I was 15, and I was terrified, and I had no idea what was going to happen. And then I saw these kids trying to get together and like stopping at nothing to hold hands or do something, you know. And I started thinking about, just the similarities between kids now and then, and what I was experiencing and what kids were experiencing now. But I didn't want it to so I started thinking about this astral plane stuff, these two separate character sets. But I made it in the future because I didn't want to, I didn't feel equipped to be like, I know what kids are thinking now. I don't know, there's something, it was a little bit more easy for me to think about kids in 2044. But then I started talking to a lot of teenagers, friends, my friends' kids, and asking them, who are the uncool people in your school? Because I was like, I have to have these kids be outcasts. And if we, knock on wood, get air, to a point where, gender and is people are allowed to express themselves however, I still think there's going to be uncool people. I just think that popularity still exists.
What did your friends, teen kids say?
Yeah, so I would be like, who are the cool people in your school? And I would get like the basketball players, the chess team, and my nephew is I feel like I could say this on tape. He's a little troubled. He's 16 right now, and he's going through some stuff. And I think he's teased in school. And I just don't think that ends. I think, as much as we can try to make it nice, there's still going to be shitty people out there who are going to be mean. And so I started thinking about how popularity, for lack of a better word, is still going to exist all throughout time, too. There's always going to be someone who feels outcast.
Yeah. Do you know if, like, in his school, like, there's any intervention in that, or like any proactive programs? Like, we don't do that.
Oh yeah. It's almost.
It still happens.
Yeah, it's almost, to me, what Oliver and Janet were talking about this morning about. It's almost the over pathologizing, the over languaging of things. Like, there's so many different categories now. He has like 8 different things he's supposed to be now. I don't know does that help? I don't know. I just think he needs to read some more poetry, but he doesn't like to read. So, yeah. So anyway, kids outside in my apartment by myself, lots of poetry books around, that astral projection book in my range, and then I started writing and then dreaming what I was writing and then writing out the dreams, and then, it kind of snowballed that way.
How did, we said we were going to talk about craft a little bit,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
Yes, we're going to get all crafty.
How did you, and I love talking about this, like how did you structure the book? Like did you sort of rough out an outline and then do one version and then put a layer on top of it, or how did it? I love the mechanics of writing a novel. How did it evolve?
I knew the ending. I knew what was going to happen, and I just needed to get there. So it was really about like plowing through and just getting to that point. It kind of came pretty easily, only because the last book has not been published was the most painful thing. It took me 15 years to write that book, and I think I learned a lot about time travel and how to, I mean, I'm talking to someone who can, your books, you flip through time like it's tissues. I don't know how you do it. It's incredible how you structure, I just don't know how you do it. Like Correspondence and Christador both go back and forth in time in the weirdest ways, and I don't know how you do it. But I was very, very impressed by that. Maybe you inspired me to do something that takes place in two different times.
Did you work out like a schema in terms of like, I forget, because I mean I read it a few months ago, but is it a perfect like alternating chapters back and forth? Like, and is it at the halfway point where like the kids from the two time periods merge, or like what's the time schema?
I think it's called close third person, but I started realizing that it wasn't going to be all Tommy. It's going to be through the eyes of these different characters. So it's through Tommy's eyes, through Jade, Pris, Tommy's best friend Dara, who's this like cool lesbian, is like the lesbian you've always wanted in high school to be your best friend, who like, you know, takes no shit, kind of brave girl. And Sally, their teacher. So you get some different perspectives. And then it got to this point where like I had to have both Tommy and Pris narrate in the same chapter. So then it was through both their eyes. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, there's a few tricks I had to pull off to get to the point where they were all speaking and going back and forth. Yeah.
And where the two eras kind of sandwich.
Merging. Yeah. And I mean, that's a good thing about writing about the astral plane is no one can fact check you on it. So, but actually you can, because what am I saying? So when you write a young adult novel, they give you authenticity readers, which to make sure you're portraying people correctly. And I was terrified. I had a black professor who read it, a Latinx person, I think is a writer, a Filipina, because Dara is Filipina. And they were all so supportive and so great, and I learned so much, and it really showed me, like, don't be afraid, just do your best, and people will support you. But my fourth authenticity reader was my friend Scott, who is an intuitive, who is an energy healer, and he taught me a lot of stuff about the astral plane. Like, you don't hurtle through the astral plane, you kind of float through it. So I had this scene where Tommy's hurtling, and he was like, no, you can't do that.
Oh, wow. So I guess you can fact check the astral plane.
You can fact check the astral plane.
All, huh?
Yeah, and he introduced me to this woman, Erin Pavlina, who is the kind of like the expert of astral projection. She lives in Las Vegas, and she is she's very well known in the Astral Projection Society. And she was her books were really helpful. They're terrifying, but they're really helpful.
How did you, like, when you're writing a scene like the scene that you wrote, right, where they are hurtling through some sort of space, right?
Yeah.
And there's all the, like, I love how you use like the detritus of all the crappy like sugar cereal commercials that we grew up on. Yeah. When you think of like all the characters from all those commercials, like the Lucky Charms guy and who Count Chocula, like you could populate a whole crazy like LSD trip with like those characters, and you really capture that. It's such an amazing mix of like it's exhilarating, but it's like sort of tacky and satirical and like campy, but kind of creepy and menacing at the same time. Like Mr. Lolly is so fun but like creepy.
Yeah.
Like when I think back on other texts, that it gives me such Willy Wonka vibes, because like Willy Wonka is so fun, but it's like, and it's so imaginative, it's so creepy and scary at the same time.
Yeah.
Like I have burned into my memory like that scene toward the end where they walk into his office or whatever, and everything is half.
Yeah.
It's like there's a half clock and like a half chair, and like, ooh, I mean, I was like 7, and it just like,
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is really weird. But like I feel like you get that great
Oh.
tone mix, you know, of like it's fun and it's like bonkers, but it's a little bit dark and kind of like menacing. So when you're writing a scene like that, because that's a long scene when they're on that journey,
Yeah.
right? And lots of things are shooting at them. It's almost like a video game, right? And they have to like fend off like these creepy things that are like coming at them. Like, what kind of a state are you in? Like, do you go into almost like, I mean, I always say that like, I would say to writers that, well, I try to forget that I'm writing and pretend that I'm reading, you know, and rather than the chore of writing, you have the pleasure. What you're trying to do as a writer is create in yourself the pleasure of reading,
That's a good way to
right?
put
So
it.
you don't feel like you're grinding forward, but you feel like you're flying forward, like on someone else's. Like, do you go into that kind of state, like where you're like almost in an out of body state, or is it a very, like that section, did you craft it very slowly and in small pieces, or did it all come out in one rush?
I think, like you, I had an agenda. I wanted to write a page turner, and I wanted to write adventure. I wanted it to be a lot of action. So I was really trying very particularly to make these characters go on a journey. And like my favorite books are like, you know, of A Wrinkle in Time, or, you know, they're always these people going on journeys, all the Narnia books. Like, I love kids going on adventures. It's just like the most thrilling
Where they
thing.
have like challenges that they must
Yeah,
meet.
it's just, I love it.
Yeah.
So that was really what I had in mind. And for you, so yesterday, Alice Elliott Dark said, while she was talking, she said, you really have the ending, you just have to allow it to come to mind. It's set up for you already. And she was just talking about how she took off 30 pages of an ending in the end of, I think her most recent book, realizing that she was sort of over padding. And you have to sort of get out of your own way to get to the ending. And I was curious, I have that question for you, but then I also want everyone to know that I think I know how you write. You are so prolific, it's almost disgusting. But we shared at a place in Fire Island, and you sit on the couch, and you're very comfortable, and you have your laptop right here. Look, you're blushing. And that's how you do it, right? You like to be on a couch.
Well, I usually lie in bed.
Really?
Like all propped up, yeah.
Oh, Daniel Mendelsohn does that too.
Really? Yeah.
So I want to know what your practice is like. Like, do you give yourself like, I'm going to finish X amount of words a day on this book while you're also writing all the other stuff you have to write? And then also the question about
Because we should say we're both writers we turn out dreck for a living.
we're creative middle class.
Yeah,
Middle,
right.
lower
Yeah,
class.
we're both freelance writers, so we're not just like that's our bread and butter is like
Yeah.
writing other articles and stuff like that.
Which you turn into Lemonade, because I feel like your work for Pause and for the Body can be reflected in Christodora, right? I mean, your expertise in
Well, yeah, definitely Christodora. That came off like I don't know at that point, like at least 10 plus years of like writing about HIV/AIDS.
Yeah.
And thinking that like the story of like the activist was like so amazing. And at that time, I mean, since there have been many iterations, but like at that time, no one had really done it in like a scripted or whatever fictional narrative form.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did help to have like all that mountain of data and like details and stuff
in your
all
head, and
into it,
and same with correspondence. You've done so much work on learning Arabic, and you go into
that
Lebanon.
book I did a lot of it, that wasn't stuff I already knew.
Right.
That was like a really research intensive.
uh-huh.
Like I was always researching, like writing one chapter and like or section of the book and like researching the section to come at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was
But
gonna.
go back. Let's go back because then I want to ask you about the practice question as well.
Right.
Like I don't know. I mean, basically, I always say to people, I think people think, oh, I could never write a novel because they picture that they have to sit down and write for like 8 hours a day, or like go to a writer's colony and write 8 hours a day for like 8 straight days or something. Like I have never done that. That's not true. In my 20s, I actually could write for like 6 or 7 hours at a time. But like in recent decades, it's more like. Basically, on a typical weekday or whatever like that, I try really hard to, like, when I get up and make coffee, not to look at texts or emails or anything and just write for like an hour or less. And usually it's like, I'm gonna write, I just wanna get through this exchange between like these two people, you know? Like I just wanna write through this beat, you know? And then sometimes, like if it's a weekend, I'll just, you know, you just on the momentum, like I'll keep going and I'll end up writing for like 2 hours. But I mean, honestly, sometimes it's like half an hour and it's like 2/3 of a page or like a little more than a page or something like that. And you know, the truth is, it's like if you do that almost every day, like you can finish a first draft in under a year, you know? So, but I also think the other thing too is like, slowly over time, it's gone from, like, I've always enjoyed it, like since a childhood, right? But there was still an aspect of like, this is a chore, this is a grind, right? And I think the trick is like, I think of it now as like, I don't know, I pretend I'm like a grandma, like, you know, who just loves quilting or loves knitting, and like, you know, the best hour of her day is like when she sits down and she knits and she's just like in the pleasure zone or something like that. Like, I just think of it like that, you know, like, for as long as I do this, even if it's a half an hour, like, I'm gonna enjoy myself, whatever that means, you know, and that could mean like writing a really happy section, or it could mean writing a sad section or a dark section, but it's like, I'm gonna fully feel this. And I'm not gonna push myself to write beyond that, you know? What about you?
I'm the worst. I write while I'm walking. I'll write on the subway. I feel like the subway is an artist in residency program that should exist forever. I print out stuff and then I scribble on the printout and then I have to read my writing and I'm like confused. But for this book, you know, I had the pandemic and I had all this time to myself, and so I got pretty far, and then I got this job, this corporate job, for 2 years. That really was a very time-consuming job, and so but the good thing about those corporate jobs is those people clock out at 5. You know, they're just like done. So I had from 5 to 7. I'm not. I hate mornings. I'm not creative in the morning. I'm not like nice in the morning.
Never write in the morning.
No, and so it's just, I hate people who can do it. It just bothers me, and I'm like they like little their tea and everything. I'm more of like a happy hour writer. So like I like to have a little Chardonnay, and I like to sit down and write some stuff. And it usually from like 5 to 7. So when I got the corporate job, it was just like, okay, I have this much energy and I have this much time. I was so time boxed because everything was so scheduled, you know. So that in a great way, that was great because I had to really condense my time, you know, to this one little moment. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's so funny that you say that about you don't like, because I feel like if I write like fiction in the morning, like everything else I have to do that day is easy. Because there's no especially like writing, like there's no deeper muscle than like the fiction, like creating it from scratch muscle. Like journalism, throwing, you know, like doing some interviews and then like throwing the piece together is it just feels so easy compared to like fiction, you know, or anything else, you know. So like it's kind of like it like actually makes the rest of the day feel kind of like a cakewalk, you know.
I think I need to be moving a lot. Like I need to be swimming or walking. I have to be moving to really write in a weird way, which is a problem because you can't really write. And I have like all these, my new favorite toy is this thing called an Alpha Net, I can't remember the name of it, but it's this keyboard from the 90s that runs on batteries, and it's just a keyboard. And I you know, because I don't want to carry my laptop everywhere. And it's this big old clunky thing, but now that's breaking down. But anyway, so you use it and you just bang on it, and then you hook it up to your computer and it zippity
So you mean
you
type and you're not even seeing what
you can see. There's this little tiny screen.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah.
And then what, you stick it into your modern day laptop and it
Wow. Just it's pretty great. Only costs $100.
Well, you know, that's a perfect segue into our other thing we were going to talk about.
Yeah.
It's 4, so I guess.
Okay, we're good. We're a little bit longer than.
Which was kind of like this time issue, like being Gen X, and you know, both our books are, you know, kind of this sense of being caught between. As you said, you wrote a really nice blurb for my book, and I was like, you really said something that nailed an aspect of the book that I hadn't even thought about. That like we grew up between the authoritarianism of boomers, you know, like often having very strict parents, or you know, kind of authoritarian, right? and a strong sense of bootstrap and stoicism, just like get over it, you know, like grow up, get over it, push it down, whatever. And then these younger generations, millennial and Z, who are, you know, as we often joke about, like obsessed with their trauma. It almost just seems like nothing is too minor to be trauma, right? And we, and it leaves us, I think, in this kind of weird, poignant, like I know for me, and even with this book, like they talk about it in the book, they're like, are we making too big a deal out of this? And even writing the book, I thought that, I was like, are you being whiny? You know, because I kind of hear an elder voice that's like, get over it. Like it's, you know what I mean? But then, you know, you look at these younger folks and there's something poignant. Like on one hand, it can be annoying. It's like, oh my God, stubbing your toe is not trauma. Like you don't have to write a suite of poems about it, you know? But that they kind of honor their own and each other's feelings,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm very touched when I see them say like, I hear you, I see you. Like, I hear that your pain, I hear what you went through, I'm sorry. Like, there's something so touching about that to me because I just feel like personally, and then maybe more broadly, like we were deprived that. You know, it was sort of just like, get over it.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's this, like, if I could write a personal essay right now and put it on LitHub or something, your book, I said this to you, your book in Another Dimension, and James Hanaham's book, Didn't Know Wouldn't Give a Shit About Carlotta, which is about a black trans woman who gets out of prison. It's basically a Rip Van Winkle story where she's stuck in prison for 20 years and comes out and it's just like, what the fuck is going on? And then I'm reading this memoir by Diana Getch, I think that's how you say your last name. She's a trans woman, and her book is really, in a weird way, about that too. Like she came into her identity in the 80s. She started exploring with it in the 80s, and just, I think all of us are going through this cultural whiplash. I don't think if you told the 15-year-old me or Tommy, you know, that the word queer was okay to be used, if you told me when I was 25 that there would be gay marriage, if you told me there'd be legalized pot, if you told me there'd be like trans acceptability and then a backlash of it, I would be like, you're crazy. It's like I think our generation is so just like, what the fuck? And like, I feel like I've gone through about 18 paradigm shifts. I thought I was, as a person, I only get one, like World War II or something, but I've gone through like so many paradigm shifts. It's happening faster and faster. So we're kind of like...
If you had been told all that when you were 15, what do you think you're... Like, I would have been, like, trans? What, like a Trans Am? Like, I didn't even...
Right.
I had no concept of what that even was.
Right. Totally. I don't know what I would have done. I don't know.
You guys want to take questions?
Yes, we should. You should, okay.
Okay.
All right.
We're babbling too much. Nan's like, oh my God, tell him to stop talking. Please tell him to stop.
We were just like really hitting our stride.
Yeah.
Writing as a child in your book, how did you find the voice for the children?
Oh, I love that question. As I said, I was on this literary magazine when I was in high school, and I found all my poetry. I still have it, all my high school poetry, and I used my high school poetry for the kids' poetry, not only Tommy's, but Pris is also a writer, and so there's a lot of my juvenile writing that I kept around, and I tell, whenever I talk to kids now, I'm like, your parents are self-storage facilities, like, that's all they are. So like, keep all your stuff and just keep it in their basements until they yell at you. Like, so I'm really glad I had all this stuff around for myself. And I used a lot of my own childhood work.
Because the vocabulary is so right on.
Oh, nice, thank you. Over there.
Yeah. Tim, so you said, you were surprised at the enormity of feeling and how hurt you were recalling this thing from your childhood. Did writing the book help sort of soothe it? Like, how do you feel now about that memory?
That's funny that you ask that, Cara, because it actually made me feel worse. Like, I'm very uncomfortable with this book. I don't really want to write as autobiographical a novel of this again. Partly because, like, it felt weirdly lazy to me. Like, after this sort of, like, immense work and the work of like really imagining like so many other lives. Like this book just felt really kind of easy and lazy because I was just like pulling it from my own, there was none of that kind of like having to merge like empathy and imagination, like when you create characters that are really different from you. But to your question, no, it didn't. I actually didn't like being in the space of my own like self-pity for like such a extended period of time, and I still feel very. I don't know. This book maybe. I think it's just too close to home. Like it just makes me uncomfortable, and I just want to move on to the next one.
Well, and without giving away the ending, I think that's reflected. Your ambiguity with whether it's the right thing. Jennifer says, do people ever think that the things they say just tossed off are going to stay with someone for the rest of their lives? What's wrong with telling someone what they did? Aren't we entitled to? And I don't think, I'm not spoiling anything, but I think that question remains throughout the book.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'd say without spoiling that, like the characters are like thrown back on what they're hoping for doesn't happen, and they're kind of thrown back on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Given your last answer, there won't be a sequel to the speech team?
I don't think so.
Well, can you tell me afterwards what happens with Tom and Marcus?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Marcus is.
No, I don't even know.
Ah.
It's very flattering when, like, with 2 novels ago, Christodora, like, many people have said, like, oh, I just hate, like, I was just so mad when it ended it. I just wanted it to go on and on, which is, like, that's, for me, is the mark of feeling really satisfied at the end of the book, where, like, you are just so in their lives, like, you just want it to go on,
Yeah.
I mean, I think partly that's, like, explains this, and just like that. Like,
Oh my
I
God.
think why
If we could do a
lot of us-
panel on that, I would be here for hours talking about that
Yeah,
show.
but there is, I think part of like, for those who can't find themselves watching it despite their, ambivalence, it's just like, there's just something very, like our lives go on, right? And they're our age, and there's something weirdly just like comforting about just watching their lives like continue to play out,
That
like-
show is written by AI before AI. I think that's the first AI written show.
Well, I like the fact that it just raises the challenge of like, what do you do? Like, what do you do with these characters? Like, what twists do you put them through? And then are the twists authentic? Do they ring real?
Right.
I don't know. But anyway, thanks. And no, I think often maybe writers feel that like when you write the last page, like you're done.
I am not in any way dissatisfied with the ending to that book. It moved me.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Greatly.
very sweet.
Greatly.
And Marcus
Thank-
is such a
thank-
long-suffering character. Thank God for Marcus.
Yeah. What
I was very sad when I love my characters so much, and I got so deeply into them, and I was very sad when I had to say goodbay to them.
Well, what's really moving about your final pages, like something comes up that in this wacky world that you create, what's really moving that's very real is the love of teachers.
Yeah.
Like, because I could, in a way that I could not, like when I left high school or after, I had, like, it was only with the passage of many years that I was like, I was blessed with like so many cool teachers. They were so open-minded. They were telling me, you're okay. Like, I think they were probably afraid in the 80s to say like, are you gay? Because if you are, it's okay. But like, they found other ways to say it to me. And even just intellectually, I mean, just like what they had us read and stuff, like I didn't appreciate that for years. And what's so lovely about your book is the final pages are just like this beautiful homage to the teachers that really are like the saviors, especially for the weird kids and like the kids who don't fit in.
Yeah.
Like with Sally and with, well,
Yeah,
it's a spoiler.
Mr. Richards. Mr. Richards is Pris's teacher, and there's something about like teaching history. I wish he was here because the way that Tommy's taught history is just like these wars happened and there was grain and these many people died, and then Tommy's like, what about how did the war affect these people? And he never really understood anything. And then Pris's teacher is teaching in a deeper way, and Sally is Tommy's teacher of English, and she's a lesbian secretly, and she creates a poetry club because she's like, poetry is gay, and that's like all the gays are gonna gravitate to this. All the little gay kids are gonna gravitate to, because there's nothing straight about poetry. So she puts it on a lavender flyer and like the poetry club, and then they all go to the poetry club.
Well, yeah, and of course, before there were openly gay straight alliance groups, there was like theater, there was
Yeah.
like the theater club, the lit magazine,
Yeah.
poetry club.
Yeah, yeah. Any more questions? No? Are we done? I think we're done. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks.
so much, you guys.